I personally believe we will have stock all-time highs and Bitcoin all-time highs before the end of 2025.
Wow.
And so people are like fearful, but guess what's going to happen? The Fed has to cut. I'm not predicting that they're going to do an emergency rate cut, but I think the odds of an emergency rate cut have significantly increased over the last 4 days. Rate cuts are not money printing, but it would help in terms of giving confidence back to the market. Hey, the Fed's not going to let this thing go off the rails, whatever. I do think that there's going to be a lot of talk of printing money. My guess is that the administration is probably going to be, well, definitely they're going to be less excited about it than they were in 2020 because they were part of printing some of that money. And they definitely will be less excited about it than the Biden administration was because they're doing the Doge stuff and like they understand the government spending is a huge problem.
We're standing on the edge of a financial hurricane with nervous investors everywhere. But here's the twist. These are the moments that breed massive opportunities. As we ride through 2025, both stocks and Bitcoin are getting ready to take off like rockets, and everything hinges on the Fed's next move. Will they play it slow, or will they make an emergency intervention that shakes the markets to their core? With the government fumbling to fix its spending mess, Bitcoin is looking more like the escape route everyone's been waiting for. In this interview, Anthony Pompliano predicts that despite the current market downturn, both stocks and Bitcoin will soar to all-time highs before 2026. According to him, the smart money is already in position, and here's the wild part. The market is beginning to change gears. After weeks of correction, CryptoQuant's data shows that Bitcoin's futures market has been flushed clean, with the leverage ratio crashing to new lows. Liquidations have wiped out a huge chunk of the high-risk traders, and now, with fewer players, the market is poised for a much-needed reset. This isn't just a cool-down, it's a chance for a slow, steady climb back to glory. We will now bring you clips from Anthony Pompliano's interview to gain more insight. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and enable notifications for additional in-depth content. Thanks for joining us again. Enjoy the video.
Could something replace the dollar? Because honestly, that's what my whole last conversation was with analyst Luke Groman. It was the idea that dollars won't run the deficits eventually. And we are making this tectonic shift away from treasuries as the reserve asset and potentially going to a neutral reserve asset like a gold, maybe someday Bitcoin. What are your thoughts on that? Because it seems like a lot of countries are going in that direction. And the one thing that Trump didn't put a tariff on is gold.
So I could make the argument that the current administration, and I think also the Democrats, they understand this is happening. He's willing to say, hey, what does that world look like? How do we position ourselves to benefit there? Whereas I think the past administration was like, let's just gravy train it. We're going to be out of here or whatever. Yeah, of course it's going away from the dollar. And I don't think that that is a good or a bad thing. I think it's just like, it's a thing. And there are some good implications for a portion of the 8 billion people in the world. There are very bad implications for a lot of people in the world, right? So it's kind of like, it's a very complicated situation, but I also don't know if there's going to be a single replacement either. So I think a lot of people in history, it was, you have a currency, whoever's in charge, the monopoly on violence. Okay, they give it up. Now somebody else comes in. Now there's one currency. Mm-hmm. Do we go to a multi-currency world? Well, one of the things that people don't really appreciate is that now the switching cost between currencies has dropped so significantly that it used to be I have to go to money changer or do all these things that are a lot of friction, very expensive. I can just press a button on my phone now, and I can switch between all these currencies. So do I have a currency not only in terms of global trade where I use different currencies, but what about for me personally? And I've said a lot that I look at Bitcoin, that's the digital savings account. I look at stable coins right now as the digital checking account. Mm-hmm. So historically, people have one currency, they use it for everything. Well, what if you have a currency that's built for saving, you have another currency that's built for spending, right? And then you have another currency that's built for speculating or whatever. Like, these are the open questions. I don't know what the world looks like in 20 years, but what it does feel like is this is a trend that has been happening for a long time. And we know that we have to do something different. And so I think my message to the critics of the tariffs is very simple. Okay, you may be right. I don't know, right? You may be right. This is the best plan I heard so far. What's a better plan? And some people will say, well, I like the tariff idea, but like the rollout could have been better. Agreed. Like the shock and awe is very painful, but it's kind of the point, but still it's very painful. The communication could have been better. Well, kind of hard to negotiate if you're like telling everyone your strategy, right? But I think those are fair critiques. But I'm very hard pressed to find people who are like, I have this better plan that we should implement. Usually it is stay the course, or I see what we're doing. Stanley Druckenmiller recently, this is the lesser of two evils, but I wish it had been, 10% instead of these big numbers, whatever. So like, I think people kind of get the fact that we got to do something different. There's just not that many options, right? Like, and frankly, in my opinion, doing something is better than just being like, screw it. We're all screwed. And, national debt's going to go to 100 trillion. And, it's just a foregone conclusion.
Do you worry that we're headed toward another crisis?
No, because the people who are crying about it aren't the people that the policies are supposed to help, right? Guess who has no different reaction this morning or tomorrow or yesterday than they did 5 months ago? The 50% of Americans who don't have stocks. And people are like, oh, their pension fund. They have no clue what's going on with their pension funds. Most of them don't even know how to log into their account to find their pension, right? And so when you look at it, like, these are young people. These are people who have decades in front of them. They're just trying to figure out, how do I make enough money so that I can afford rent, that I can maybe one day afford a home, I can buy food, I can do all this. Like, they don't care. And so I had somebody recently who reached out. I have a lot of people who reached out to me over the last couple of months or the last couple of weeks. Some of them I really, really respect. They're incredible investors, all this stuff. And then frankly, some of them are just like trolls, right? And everything in between. So I've heard a lot of the critiques, but I've also heard from a lot of people. And there's this one woman, she's in her 60s in Ohio. And I had been on the podcast and I'd kind of talked through and I said something to the effect of, most of my friends in New York have no clue what my friends who are in the working class, people that I was in the military with, people that I played football with in college, like these people, they don't have jobs where they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. They don't live in major cities. They live in the middle of the country or in the Southeast. And they're saying to themselves, I voted for this because finally somebody's listening. And this woman reached out and she said, you nailed it, right? She's like, that's how I feel. And so it doesn't make her right. It doesn't make that group of people right. It doesn't make the Wall Street finance people wrong, right? It's just like, there's two different worlds here. And so I go to this idea of the stock market, the faster it falls, the faster it will recover. The structural changes to the market have actually not occurred yet. So if all of a sudden we had one rate cut and Trump says 2 or 3 positive things, the market will be back to all-time highs, right? And so it's like there's not like a structural decay. Stocks are going down because people are fearful, right? You see the extreme fear and the fear and greed gauges, all that kind of stuff. So if that's the case, there's one X factor in all of this. I don't know if it'll happen, but what the administration is saying, and I'm just listening to what they're saying because that's their plan. They claim that they are going to give the largest tax cut in history to people who make $150,000 or less, not to billionaires and rich people. Like, by the way, Trump's been horrible for billionaires. I think they lost in the last 3 days. They lost like $500 billion, right? Yeah. Or collectively $7 trillion since he came into office, $500 billion just in the last 3 days. So like the whole idea of like, hey, everyone's getting rich, the exact opposite's happening. Like they actually are pretty pissed at him. But I had never heard a politician say, I want to give a tax cut to 150,000 or less. Now they're claiming that they're going to try to get federal income tax level to 0. Again, feels like shock and awe. And then maybe they can give some sort of tax cut. So if you can go from, call it, 30-ish% depending on the different income levels, and you can get down to 20%. Imagine if you could cut 1/3 of the federal income tax bill for every single American, which is like 80% of Americans or something make $150,000 or less. Put more money into their pockets, right? Like that would be incredible.
The US dollar's dominance is under threat as trade deficits swell and nations quietly ditch treasuries. Could gold, Bitcoin, or a multi-currency system take its place? This administration sees the shift coming, unlike past leaders who ignored it. A weaker dollar brings winners and losers, but tech makes switching currencies effortless. Meanwhile, markets wobble, yet most Americans care more about rent than stocks. With seismic financial changes ahead, one thing's clear. The era of dollar supremacy is evolving, ready or not. Here's the million-dollar question. Could slashing tariffs to just 5 to 10% actually work? It's a gamble, but the administration is out here playing 4D chess while Wall Street's stuck on checkers. Meanwhile, Bitcoin's trapped in the stock market madness, and guess what? When regular folks jump into crypto, they treat it like just another thing to flip in their portfolio. The dream of Bitcoin as digital gold? It's hanging on by a thread, but that decoupling moment? Yeah, that's going to need a full-blown dollar crisis to light the fuse. Right now, both markets are just stumbling forward, figuring it out on the fly. According to Pompliano, this could be the wildest financial roller coaster of the century. Let's watch more clips from the interview.
What's like the perfect needle to thread here, which has low odds but high asymmetry, is tariffs get down to 5 to 10% blanket. We remove them for products that we need. We don't have a recession. We don't have high inflation. And there is a reshoring. There is a increase in American jobs. And people think that scenario, they're like, that's impossible. Maybe. I just have a higher odds on it. Not even, I'm not predicting that's what's going to happen. I'm just saying that while everyone is so bearish, I think that it's a complete overreaction. And so what I'm saying is, again, people really, really don't like, and half the country doesn't like the current administration. If you objectively look at them, they have been hyper successful. These people are not idiots. You may not like their policy. You may not think that they are rolling it out correctly, the communication, all stuff. But the one thing that we should all be able to agree on is you're not dumb. And so if you go and you look at somebody like Scott Bessent, who's not really that political, right? It's one like the Trump stuff, whatever. But Bessent is a good example. The guy understands. And I saw somebody talking about, they were like, Bessent is almost trying to do to China what he, Soros, and Druckenmiller did to the pound, right? He's trying to break their will. And so I just think that it's very easy to play Monday morning quarterback and be like, look at these morons. They don't know what they're doing because you see the stock market going down. But they openly have told you they don't care about the stock market. They're focused on the 10-year yield, which has been going down, and they're focused on oil. That's been going down. So they're accomplishing what they want. Now, they claim, and again, it's a claim, that is going to lay the foundation for this big economic boom, and it's going to be this amazing thing, and economic utopia or whatever. Yeah. Let's see, right? If it happens, I think every American would be incredibly excited. I keep saying that if they give 0% federal income tax to people who make $150,000 or less, like people be in the streets. They're like, this is the greatest thing ever. I don't care what my politics are, right? Like I don't have to pay federal income tax. Again, is that likely to happen? Probably not. Is there some cut that's coming? Probably. And so then all of a sudden, does that offset the tariffs? Like we could play this game all day long, right? It's a very complex system. And so I just think that people shouldn't be as fearful as they have been. And I think that tariffs will actually be, in hindsight, seen as much better for the country than kind of people right now with the very extreme reactions.
Last question for you. When will Bitcoin truly decouple and become this flight to safety, which it was holding up pretty well and then sort of crashed again?
I don't think it will decouple. It shouldn't decouple in the sense of until the end, right? So if you think about why is Bitcoin's correlation more closely tied to the stock market? Well, because more people that hold Bitcoin today have stocks. In the early days, there's a lot of people who, frankly, they just put all their money in Bitcoin. They didn't have stocks. They didn't care what happened in the stock market. They weren't buying or selling based on interest rates or geopolitical event. Like they were just like, I'm a Bitcoiner. I like Bitcoin. That's my savings tool. I buy all Bitcoin and I just hold it. That's not true anymore. Like a lot of people who hold Bitcoin or are coming in to buy Bitcoin now, they have stocks. They have these portfolios. And so they think risk on, risk off. Do I sell all my stocks in crypto or do I go and invest in stocks in crypto? And so you should expect that correlation to creep up. That's not going to go to 1, right? I think gold and Bitcoin are very closely linked. There are times where the correlation is higher or lower, but I do think that like we are not going back to the fully uncorrelated, world that we were in before because you're getting mass adoption. And so as you get mass adoption, then the people who hold it all act the same. They're the masses. And so you should expect there to be that correlation. Now, the like quote unquote decoupling that I think everyone wants to see in terms of like the coupling can only occur if people basically say this thing is the new global reserve currency. This other stuff like doesn't work anymore, right? Because the other stuff fails so bad that Bitcoin, is the survivor. I just think we're very far away from that world, right? Like every time the Treasury Secretary talking about Bitcoin as a store of value is light years ahead of where we were 5 years ago, right?
Yeah, he said it on a recent interview.
Bitcoiners, we're winning, right? Like we're making progress. Congratulations. Awesome. That does not mean we're going to be the global reserve currency tomorrow. And so I think that if you look out over 30, 40, 50 years, I'm really excited about Bitcoin. What's going to happen in 6 months? I have no clue. And so I just think that you have to keep updating your mental model on like what Bitcoin is and how it operates in this, economic system. Because if you stay in the 2018 to 2022, kind of mindset, like BlackRock's here. right? Fidelity's here. Like they don't act the same. And so understand what they do that's different and how the world is changing. And that's, I think, what makes it so intellectually stimulating. And, frankly, it's good for people who create content because you always got something to talk about.
The recent rollout of aggressive U.S. tariffs has sparked fresh debates about the dollar's long-term dominance and Bitcoin's potential to emerge as a viable alternative. As the dollar index continues its downward trend, dropping nearly 6% year-to-date, crypto analysts are increasingly viewing Bitcoin as a hedge against fiat currency instability. Bitwise's Jeff Parks crystallized this sentiment, stating it's the first time Bitcoin surpassing the dollar felt not like theory, but an actual truth to grapple with. This perspective gains weight as traditional safe havens like gold face practical limitations in storage and transfer, while Bitcoin's digital nature offers global accessibility. The tariff policies have unexpectedly failed to bolster the dollar, instead contributing to market volatility that's impacted both traditional and crypto assets. Bitcoin's 18% price decline since January reflects its current correlation with risk assets, but its fundamental value proposition as decentralized, hard-capped money continues attracting long-term believers. Economist Saifedean Ammous argues the core issue isn't trade deficits, but the dollar's status as a global fiat money printer, suggesting Bitcoin or gold as solutions to this monetary debasement. As trust in government-issued currencies wanes, Bitcoin's attributes, including its predictable issuance and borderless nature, position it as a compelling alternative reserve asset. Anthony Pompliano's perspective aligns with this shift. While Bitcoin's correlation with stocks persists today, its role as a neutral, decentralized asset could redefine global finance in the decades ahead. While Bitcoin may not decouple from traditional markets immediately, the combination of dollar weakness, geopolitical tensions, and institutional adoption creates fertile ground for its maturation. The coming years may test whether Bitcoin can transition from volatile asset to legitimate challenger of the dollar's reserve currency status. As we wrap up, which scenario do you see playing out? Dollar collapse, Bitcoin ascent, or a messy coexistence? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Share this video and hit the like button. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.